welcome to Maplewoodian.com podcast. We have on the phone Beth Daugherty, president of the South Orange Maplewood School Board. Hello, Beth.
Hi, Joe.
Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
The first thing we have to do is change the name of the school district to Maplewood South Orange because we get second rating. But I know that's. I think a lot of people don't know Maplewood came out of South Orange.
Right.
We were originally the South Orange School District because we were part of South Orange, so that all works. But that's not why we're here to talk to you. It is nearing the end of the school year, and lots of things on people's minds. First of all, Brian Osborne, he had flirted with leaving earlier in the school year, got a job offer in Michigan, turned it down. But his contract in our district ends soon, or where does that stand?
It ends June 30th. The board has indicated that we would like to renew his contract for another 5 years, and we are currently in the process of negotiating the conditions of that contract. I guess most people are aware there's a salary cap.
Yes.
That's an executive order by the governor. It's several years old now. That's very frustrating. It would cap. I think it's 165, and then there's different allowances you can have based on the size of your district, and if you have a high school. So Dr. Osborne's salary would be around $177,500, I believe. Right now he makes $220,000, so it's over a $40,000 pay cut, which is ridiculous. We're in the process of negotiating what the conditions of his contract will be for those 5 years. And in the same time, there's legislation pending right now moving through both houses to eliminate the superintendent's salary cap. So, we just passed a resolution at our board meeting this past April 28th supporting those bills that are in the House and the Senate, because it would be a wonderful thing to have that superintendent cap eliminated so that, we could reward Dr. Osborne for the fine work that he does in this district and his commitment to staying by, keeping the current salary he has and, potentially giving a raise. So that's where we stand with his future here. I can't speak to, what's going on in those negotiations, but the board does want him to stay for another 5 years.
Now, and his contract is up at the end of June?
Correct. June.
So we have some time to get this worked out, but not as much, right? It's sort of down. Does he seem receptive from what you know or from what you've heard? I know you can't give it into details, but what's sort of the flavor of how it's going?
Stay.
Yeah,
he would like to stay. He feels like there's a lot of good work that's been done here,
yes.
But there's a lot more to do, and there are a lot of things he'd like to see more progress on and see through. We're both working very hard to come to an agreement that's satisfactory to both the board and the superintendent.
Is the thought that this legislation would be approved in Trenton and we would do away with this cap? What's sort of the feeling from what you hear? Is that looking likely, or?
I think...
Because the original order was not something that the legislature approved, correct?
Right, it was an executive order. And then right now I think it stands through like 2016 or something like that, quite a while. So much as we're trying to push for it, I don't think it's accurate to say we're optimistic that it would be lifted by June 30th. It's the type of thing that if it passes both houses, there's a reasonable chance that the governor would veto it. Whether or not it would have enough support to override the veto, I don't know. And whether all of that would happen by June 30th is probably a long shot, but we can still push for it.
But there's also the thought that he signs on for 5 years, and then maybe in a year or so the cap is lifted, and then you can renegotiate. And
that is a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not speaking along those lines yet, and that's the type of thing that we really don't comment on publicly right now.
But
it is an option
that I'm sure he's well aware of, and if he wants to stay here, he knows that could be the approach.
Right.
But with incentives and other things, it's not enough to get him over the 200,000, even though it looks like
there's very little we can do. There's so many restrictions on what can be done, what can be included in a contract. Yeah, so.
we've always been supportive, and I know, and generally in the community, he gets high marks, and people who follow the district know he's done things like full-time kindergarten and a lot of other juggling of resources to keep the important programs going. This latest budget that the board just approved, and now both the township and the village governing bodies must approve it, or the
no, that's
the joint committee.
That's not the way it works anymore.
The Board of School Estimate doesn't do its work anymore?
They do. They approve bonding for capital projects.
Right.
So when the school board election was moved to November, part of that legislation included that for boards of education who held their elections in November, there was no longer a public vote, or in our case, a Board of School Estimate vote on the school operating budget if it was within the statutory cap limitations, which is the 2% cap, plus any allowances that are granted by the state, to acknowledge growing enrollment and things like that. So both last year and this year, it's the school board that has been the definitive authority on levying the tax for the operating budget for the school district.
Right, and the board approved it on April 28th.
Right.
8-1.
8-1.
That was the $110.5 million total, $3.9 million debt service, 106 with a pretty low tax burden, correct?
Correct.
0.9% increase.
The net increase, when you consider it, was 2.0% increase in operating budget, but when you factored in the debt service, we got a better interest rate on the bond sale than we originally planned for, so it brought the all-in number down to 1.97. And that is distributed, the ultimate effect over the two towns is different, and that has to do with the way the allocation is calculated at the county level.
So once the school board approves, that's all that's needed.
That's it.
And doesn't the county superintendent have to approve, or did he already do that? He
approved it. So we approved the budget 9-0 March 17th.
Right.
And that was the preliminary budget that gets submitted to the county superintendent for his approval, which occurred. And then we passed the resolution to levy the tax. So that's really what we're doing. What we did in April was the resolution to levy the tax to pay for the budget.
And the only person who voted against it was Joanna Wright?
Yes.
Who is a new member?
Yes.
Yes. Now, what we've heard from some that what is this budget cut back on? What does it add in? I heard there were some special education instructors.
So there's
you tell me.
There's an overall reduction of 15.5. What we call FTE, full-time equivalent, so staff members, and that is spread out through the high school and the elementary. I'm trying to find the list right now. So there's some reductions at the high school that will be seen through scheduling efficiencies. There's a reduction. There's a secretary. There's a child study team member. There's 0.5 transportation person. The enrichment program, we still had two math enrichment teachers. There's a reduction, so the enrichment program as we know it will be eliminated. One of those staff members, one headcount equivalent will be reduced, and the other headcount equivalent will be incorporated into what we're calling a gifted and talented specialist. So the net, even though it's -2 for enrichment, it's +1 for gifted and talented, so the net there is just a -1. And then in special education, we had a reduction of 6 staff members that is due to enrollment changes and scheduling efficiencies. Once again, Dr. Osborne just at our last meeting, April 28th, revised that estimate to say that it looks like it may actually be more like a reduction in 4. And so, therefore, there's going to have to be belt tightening in other areas, to compensate. Okay, if we have to keep 2 more staff there, then what else are we going to cut? Because the budget, everyone needs to know, right, is a planning tool.
Right.
And we're planning for as far out, the planning was done leading up to the March vote and needs to carry us through all the way till June 2015. So, things get adjusted along the way, and we always will make sure that we're in compliance with the law as far as the ratios of students to teachers in the special education department.
Now, you are also under the 2% cap, or does that not apply to school districts?
We're right at the 2% cap.
Right. But that is the legal limit that you can only raise the tax rate or the budget 2% a year, or no? Well,
we had cap adjustments. Every year we get cap adjustments from the state. So this year we left almost $3 million of taxing authority, and that's when people hear banked cap, we need to make sure there's not the confusion that there's money in the bank that you didn't spend.
It's a cap you could engage in, but you do not. Yeah.
It's taxing authority. This year there was 2.875, actually almost 2.876 million from the last 4 years. Some of that money, about $1 million, was from 11-12, about $500,000 from 12-13, $400,000 from 13-14, and then almost $1 million granted to us in allowances for next year. And all that money is a combination of reflection of enrollment growth and increase in healthcare premium costs. And so, out of respect to the burden, on the taxpayers, because goodness knows we could certainly use that money, put it to good use within the school district, we chose not to use that. I mean, we officially, without going to the Board of School Estimate, we could have been at almost a 5% increase, because $1 million of taxing authority more or less equates to a 1% in tax increase.
So if you are under the cap by a certain amount one year, you can use that extra space the next year? Or the next year? They allow you to carry over, as it were?
They allow you to carry over those adjustments, those waivers that the state grants.
Okay.
If you're just under the blanket 2%, no, you may not carry that over.
Okay.
Right, but if the state has said, here's an extra $300,000 for enrollment and here's an extra $600,000 for health care, which is what they said in 11-12, then yes, that $900,000, the way it works is the year it's granted, that's the pool of money that if you're going to go over 2%, you dip into the current waiver first, and then if you use up all of that, you'd start dipping into the banked cap. So, and then the taxing authority can only be banked, if you will, for 3 years.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So this year, we forfeited, there was almost $1 million from 11-12 that's now no longer available, period, gone. Right?
So the increase for this year is what percentage? Just so people are clear.
For this year, it's
or the budget that was just approved for next year?
It's a flat 2% for the operating budget, and when you factor in debt service, it brings us down to a 1.97% increase in the school budget over last year.
And the tax hit is about what average, or do you not have that?
The tax hit, you know what? That's on my computer. I don't have a printout in front of me, but it was. I want to say it's like 2.1 in Maplewood, and it was upper twos. Might have been 2.7 or 2.9. It was upper twos in South Orange, but that has to do with all the equalized valuations and stuff for the two towns, the formulas provided us by the county clerk. And that caused a lot of questioning at the board meeting, as Cheryl Snyder was explaining that, these are formulas that the county gives her to plug the numbers into, and, it's not... The decisions that we made at the board level were still consistent, 2.0% increase in the school operating budget. The way that's distributed across the two towns, that's where that other disparity comes into play.
Excellent. And, of course, one of my biggest pet peeves and complaints, what percentage of our budget do we get from the state these days?
Oh, it's like 4 or 5.
Now it's down to, I think at one point it was 8%.
Yeah, it's
now
lower.
It's even lower, which I've written and ranted about, and will continue to, because to me that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, the State Funding Reform Act, so what's known as the SAFRA formula, it is somewhat unrealistic to think that the state can fully fund that. I mean, they probably could if they, implemented the millionaire's tax or something like that. I mean, they're, through more taxing, they might be able to do it. They certainly couldn't do it with current tax levels. But even with the amount they do collect and distribute, they don't distribute it based on the formula. There's a lot of off-formula distribution. We ran an analysis that just looked at the percentage of aid that different districts got based on the formula.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it wasn't consistent. If you're going to distribute aid partially across, and you should see the same percentage. Everybody's getting 70% or whatever, but you didn't. You saw, we got like 57%. Other districts might get 89%. Some districts get over 100%. It did not make any sense. So we passed a resolution back in January objecting to that and requesting more transparency in the way partial aid is distributed, so that it could be more. There could be more fairness in the way, more equitably distributed.
Well, I'm not expecting much from the state on that or other things, but
I don't expect any drastic changes. But with the new Commissioner of Education, there is an opportunity, I think, for kind of a review of how it is being distributed.
Oh, excellent.
Once they get past, not for this, not for the budget distribution right now, for state aid distribution, but maybe for next year.
Excellent. Now, the other thing that's on people's minds, the teachers' union, their last contract ended last summer.
Right.
So they've been without a contract and in negotiations. I believe there was at least 1 or 2 points. They had been maybe not a stalemate, but there had been arbitration brought in.
It's called a mediation.
Mediation, that's what it is, yes. Where does that stand?
We went to mediation, and then the negotiation task force signed a memorandum of agreement. This was back in the fall, I believe. But then the teachers' union membership voted against.
Right, there was the negotiators had come to an agreement that their side had agreed.
There was a memorandum of agreement that was signed.
What was that for? How many years? What kind of salary?
It was for 1 year, and it was for a 2.2% increase.
Right.
And that was voted down by the membership.
So the negotiators agreed, but the membership voted it down.
Correct.
Right.
And then we've been in mediation since, and that's pretty much all I can say about that.
Any idea if that is looking hopeful or not, or kind of the same? And would
I really can't comment. There's really nothing to report at this point in time.
Can we ask when the last meetings were held, or negotiations?
I really can't.
Okay, no problem. And nothing kicks in where if there's not a contract by a certain date, any problems arise, right?
There really aren't any date-driven.
Right. They couldn't be negotiating for another year if they wanted, and that doesn't spark any kind of.
The teachers are being paid basically what they were paid for the 12-13 school year.
And the last contract you recall was how much, and how much of a salary increase?
Oh dear, I don't have those numbers.
Okay, but there was, I believe, at least.
Do you have them in front of you?
No, but I do recall.
I don't have them right in front of me.
There was multi-year, and there were salary increases each year.
Right.
And they also, if I recall, the last contract had some major changes in terms of what the teachers got. They started getting days or afternoons off for conferences, and they started getting some other things that they hadn't gotten before. And then I think the health benefits were at least discussed more. But their piece of the health cost had gone up.
Well, the state, based on state legislation, state requirements, the teachers are now paying a percentage of their premium as opposed to 1.5% of salary. Right, so that went into effect this school year. That went into effect July 1 because the contract had expired, and so now the state law is governing that.
Okay.
So all teachers are now contributing a percentage of their premium costs. What we negotiated in the last contract that's still in effect, because it's the last contract, is that the district, there's something called Direct 10 and Direct 15. Those are different plans under the state health care plan. Direct 15 it's a good plan. It's kind of the baseline plan, if you will. It has slightly higher co-payments and things like that, higher deductibles, things like that. So it was negotiated that the district paid, besides what the employee has to contribute, be it 1.5% or a percent of premium, the district then took care of the Direct 15 payment. If the employee wanted a more comprehensive package, a package something like Direct 10, where your co-payments are less, your deductible is less, things like that, then the employee had to buy up the difference. They had to pay up for the difference in the premium cost. And so that's an additional contribution that, by choice, the employees are making. They don't have to choose to buy up to a more expensive plan. But if they want the more expensive plan, they pay the difference. And that was one of the big things that we negotiated last time around.
Excellent. Okay. Any other issues to bring up at this point that people should know about, good and bad?
We're very excited about new leadership at the high school.
Yes.
Elizabeth Aaron,
she
everybody.
Has great credentials from what we see.
Parents, staff at the high school, students at the high school, there's a lot of buzz around that. I know Elizabeth is very excited, so it's, I think we're in for a lot of progress, a lot of, positive movement at the high school, so that would be a great thing.
And I think that's all I wanted to bother you about. The next board meeting
is May. So we have two board meetings in May. We have a board meeting May 15th, and the reason is by law we have to renew staff members by May 15th.
Sure.
On our schedule of having board meetings every third Monday, the 19th missed the deadline. Mm-hmm. So the May 15th board meeting is focused solely on the renewal of staff. And then our regular board meeting will be on the 19th. The 15th is a Thursday. So it's kind of weird to have those meetings back to back like that, but we're doing it to meet the legal deadline of the 15th.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time with us. We will keep up to date on the union talks and on the superintendent. Hopefully there'll be some good news on his re-signing.
Yeah.
And if not, we'll, I'm sure, have good leadership in the superintendent's office, as you always do.
Yeah, I don't even want to go there at the moment.
We won't, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Joe.